Hi, this is Yulia, and you're watching my channel, Rebels and Revolutions. After spending our last 6 episodes in Cuba, what is that? I thought we could migrate back to Europe. If you Google the subject of this series, you are unlikely to find it described as a revolution. Much has been made of the fact that the rise of Mussolini in Italy was accomplished within the constitutional framework, with the king himself offering him the post of prime minister. Thus, this transfer of power cannot be described as a revolution. In my story, I beg to differ. More importantly, I argue that it was a revolution in the minds of an entire generation, exemplified in one person, Benito Mussolini. In preparation for this episode, I studied an outstanding work of a Russian historian who called it the Revolution of One. And while it is clearly an over-dramatization, I liked it enough to adopt it as the title of my next episode on this subject. There is no easy way to explain this miraculous transformation in Italian society without going back in time to gather a much-needed background. The year was 1808, and 1809, and 1810. As Napoleon's armies invaded countries in Europe, Italians gladly adopted the revolutionary spirits of French Jacobins. And Italy was right in the eye of the revolutionary storm, with a multitude of secret and not-so-secret societies stirring up some controversy. First, there were the Carbonaries, led by the legendary Giuseppe Garibaldi. Then it was Giuseppe Mazzini's Young Italy movement. Back then, you must have been called Giuseppe in order to be considered a real revolutionary. Mazzini was among the first Italian revolutionaries who linked nationalism and revolution together. He wanted Bourbons and Habsburgs gonzo, while making Italy great again by uniting all Italian territories into one democratic republic. Italy did unite, but it was done under the auspices of King of Piedmont Victor Emmanuel of the House of Savoy. Mazzini was only about 50% happy. While Italy became united, it, as well as the rest of Europe, was still ruled by old monarchies that periodically fought one another, killing thousands of their subjects only to make peace with each other and marry their cousins. Yet, Mazzinian Republicans, while sympathetic to revolutionary struggles in other countries, cared first and foremost about Italy. In 1847, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels wrote their Communist Manifesto, and that little book was downloaded on each and every iPhone in Europe, changing the world forever. Mazzinian Republicans used to be the bad boys of the revolution. They rode their Harley-Davidsons all over Europe, scaring respectable people with their ideas of creating a democratic republic in Italy. And suddenly, these young Italians found themselves to be old news, as a much more exciting breed of socialist revolutionaries appeared all over Europe. These new dudes were totally crazy, as they insisted that it does not matter whether you're Italian or German or French. Working men have no countries. All workers are brothers. Proletariat of all countries, unite. And since all workers are brothers, they should never fight with one another, only with their oppressors, the capitalists and the ruling elites. They should not go to war with one another, even if their countries do so. Their goal is a worldwide revolution, which can only be achieved through violent struggles with their oppressors. That was too much for Mazzinian Republicans and other respectable revolutionaries. And after the initial honeymoon with these infrequently bathed internationalists, Republicans quickly disassociated themselves from them. After all, while these Republicans did not want to be ruled by tsars and kings, they had no interest in being ruled by workers and these new socialist revolutionaries and anarchists who wanted to take all private property and do many other crazy things. Thus, the stage was set for a bitter split between Republican revolutionary forces, who were concerned with Italy, and socialist revolutionaries, who did not care an iota about Italy or France, but only about a pan-European revolutionary storm.
There's a storm coming, buddy. There's a storm coming.
Mazzini also did not like Karl Marx's beard, nor did he like his ideas of socialism, as good old Giuseppe wanted to build a functioning Republican state and had no interest of surrendering it to a bunch of violent hippies. Mazzini's supporters thus began a gentle harassment of socialist revolutionaries, which escalated into violence on both sides. To be sure, these divisions in revolutionary forces were not unique to Italy. However, here, this division took an extreme form. As socialist or internationalist revolutionary movements matured, so did many of their leaders, such as Marx or Engels. And while they were starting to become tamer, questioning that perhaps the proletariat revolution should not completely destroy the current regime, maybe a facelift would suffice. The younger hotheads among the Marxist fan club revolted, led by a Russian revolutionary, Mikhail Bakunin, who split this revolutionary movement again by creating an even more extreme form of it, anarchists, who believed in killing any ruler, tsar, or king to expedite the revolutionary process. And while the more moderate socialists were dominating Central Europe, the socialist movements in Italy and Spain got the benefit of being dominated by these crazy anarchist dudes, thus making the contrast between old Mazzinian Republicans and the new anarchist nutjobs even more drastic and irreconcilable. And in Italy, all these crazy anarchic boys and girls made Bologna the epicenter of their activity. And that is where Benito Mussolini was born and raised, got his driver's license, as well as lessons in Marxism from his father, Alexander, who was a professional revolutionary and was very busy fomenting revolutions, when he was not in jail, of course. Wow, I finally made it to Mussolini after 6 minutes of a history lesson. But trust me, this was necessary. And now it's time to bring our boy Benito into my story. Mussolini was born in the village of Predappio on July 29th of 1893, 4 months after the death of Karl Marx. Much was made of his violent personality as a child, and his sexual escapades as a young adult. None of those juicy facts, however, are of any real consequence to my analysis of the fascist revolution that was to take place in Italy in the early 1920s. What is important is that by the time the boy finally met the world, Benito Mussolini was an even more committed socialist revolutionary of Bakunin's variety than was his father. BM, as I like to call him, already concluded that his childhood hero, Karl Marx, was a softie, and much more radical measures are needed to expedite the socialist revolution. And a truly committed socialist most certainly does not serve in the army of a capitalist exploiter. Thus, Mussolini decided to leave Italy for Switzerland to avoid military service. That puts my story in the summer of 1902. Let's pause on this note. I promise we will be back to continue this in my next episode. I hope to see you very soon on my channel, Rebels and Revolutions. So long!